Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The nanoforge hummed beneath Alexian's fingers as he manipulated streams of crystalline particles, carefully weaving them into the intricate pattern taking shape before him. Outside his workshop Igloo, Frostalis's eternal twilight cast deep blue shadows through the translucent ice walls, but here in his sanctuary, the soft glow of his work illuminated everything in a gentle azure radiance. He adjusted the molecular stabilizers with practiced precision, watching as the weapon's core began to crystallize. This piece was different from his usual commissions, not just another pretty bauble for some off-world collector. This was art born of necessity, a reminder of why he'd chosen exile on this frozen world. The security sensors chimed, breaking his concentration. Alexian's eyes flicked to the monitoring panel. Something large had breached the outer perimeter, triggering the thermal alarms. He cursed under his breath, carefully setting down his tools. "Display external feeds," he commanded. The holographic interface flickered to life, showing multiple angles of the barren ice field surrounding his compound. At first, he saw only the usual whiteout conditions of a Frostalis storm, but then movement, a figure stumbling through the driving snow. Alexian zoomed in, frowning. The figure's skin seemed to glow with a faint purple luminescence, visible even through the storm. Not human, not any species he recognized either. Computer, analyze life signs. Subject exhibits severe hypothermia. Cellular degradation imminent. Estimated survival time without intervention, 12 minutes. Alexian's jaw clenched. He'd sworn never to get involved in others' problems again, not after what happened to his family. But watching someone freeze to death outside his door... "Damn it," he muttered, grabbing his thermal coat. "Activate emergency protocols. Prep the medical bay." He pulled on his protective gear and headed for the airlock. The moment he stepped outside, the bitter wind cut through him like knives. Even with his enhanced cold resistance, Frostalis's storms were brutal. He activated his helmet's thermal imaging and spotted the figure, now collapsed in the snow about 50 meters out. Alexian trudged through the deep drifts, the wind howling around him. As he got closer, he could see the alien more clearly. Definitely female, with violet skin that seemed to pulse with weak bioluminescence. Her clothing was torn and frozen, and what looked like burn marks marred one side of her body. He reached down to check her pulse, finding it thready but present. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that glowed with an inner light. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "They're coming." "Who's coming?" Alexian demanded, but she had already lost consciousness. Cursing again, he scooped her up in his arms. She was surprisingly light, her skin ice-cold against his chest even through his protective gear. As he turned back toward his shelter, something caught his eye, a faint shimmer in the storm, like heat distortion in the air. His tactical instincts, honed by years of warfare, screamed danger. He quickened his pace, trying to maintain his footing in the deep snow. The security feeds had shown nothing else out there, but something about this felt wrong. The woman's wounds weren't just from the cold. She'd been in a fight, and recently. They reached the airlock just as his sensors picked up multiple incoming signatures at the edge of their range. The door sealed behind them with a reassuring hiss as the decontamination cycle began. "Computer, full lockdown. Activate all defensive systems." "Acknowledged. Warning. Multiple unidentified vessels detected in high orbit." Alexian looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms, her purple skin now barely glowing at all. "What have you gotten me into?" he murmured. He carried her to the medical bay, laying her gently on the examination table. Up close, her beauty was even more striking, Her features were delicate but strong, and intricate patterns swirled across her violet skin like star maps. But she was dying, her core temperature dangerously low. Computer, full bioscan. The medical scanners hummed to life, bathing her in soft light. Subject exhibits severe hypothermia and multiple plasma burns. Internal bleeding detected, genetic structure unknown, no match in database. Alexian began removing her frozen outer garments, trying to access the wounds beneath. Begin emergency warming protocols. Prepare synthetic plasma for transfusion. As he worked, his trained eye noted details that raised more questions. Her clothing, though damaged, was clearly military grade. The burns weren't random. They formed distinct patterns consistent with close-range energy weapon fire. Someone had been trying to kill her. Her eyes snapped open suddenly, glowing with panic. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "The crystal," she gasped. "Is it safe?" "Easy," Alexian said firmly, trying to keep her still. "You're safe here. I'm trying to help you." She searched his face intently, her luminescent eyes seeming to peer into his soul. "I'm Kreia," she managed, her voice weak but musical. "You have to hide it." "Hide what? What crystal?" But she had passed out again, her grip going slack. The monitors showed her vitals stabilizing, but barely. Whatever she was running from, whatever she was trying to protect, it would have to wait. Alexian continued treating her injuries, his movements precise and efficient. As he worked, his security systems continued reporting the orbital vessels moving into position above them. He needed answers, but first he needed her alive to give them. Hours passed as he stabilized her condition. The wounds began to heal under regenerative treatment, her natural bioluminescence growing stronger. He found himself studying her face, noting how her expression shifted even in unconsciousness. There was something compelling about her beyond just her exotic beauty. "Unidentified vessels have entered low orbit," the computer announced, energy signatures consistent with military craft. Alexian moved to his command console, bringing up the tactical display. 3 ships, definitely military, definitely not local. Their sensor pattern suggested they were scanning the surface, looking for someone, looking for her. He glanced back at Kreia's sleeping form. His isolation here had been carefully cultivated, a shield against past pain. Getting involved in whatever conflict she was fleeing could shatter that peace forever. But as he watched her chest rise and fall, saw the way her skin shimmed with returning life, he knew it was already too late. He was involved now, whether he liked it or not. A soft moan drew his attention back to the medical bay. Kreia was stirring, her eyes fluttering open. This time they were clearer, more focused. "Where?" she started to ask. "You're in my workshop on Frostalis," he told her. "I found you in the storm. You're safe for now, but there are ships in orbit looking for something. Or someone." She tried to sit up, wincing. "How long was I unconscious?" "About 4 hours. Long enough for whoever's after you to track you here." He crossed his arms. "I think it's time you told me what kind of trouble I've inherited." Kreia's luminescent eyes darted to the tactical display, then back to him. She moved with careful grace despite her injuries, swinging her legs off the medical bed. "You're Alexian," she said, "the cryo-forge master. I recognized your work when I was scanning for shelter." A slight smile curved her lips. "Your reputation reaches far beyond this frozen world." "And you're deflecting," he replied flatly. "There are 3 warships up there, and you've got plasma burns that aren't even in my medical database. Start talking." She stood, testing her balance. The medical gown did little to hide her athletic figure, but Alexian kept his eyes locked on hers. After a moment, she reached into a hidden pocket in her torn uniform and withdrew something that made his breath catch. It was a crystal about the size of his palm, but it seemed to contain galaxies. As she held it, warm light pulsed from within, and the temperature in the room noticeably rose. "The soul crystal," she said softly. "My people's greatest treasure and greatest burden. It contains the power to generate endless thermal energy, to warm entire worlds." Her expression hardened. Lorden wants it to power his weapons, to turn its life-giving heat into something that brings only death. Alexian's mind raced with the implications. Lorden? The same tyrant who's been conquering the outer systems? The same. She hesitated, then continued. He's dying. Some rare condition that makes him unable to generate body heat. He believes the crystal can cure him, but using it that way would destroy its essence. My people have protected it for millennia, passing it from guardian to guardian. I'm the last. The security system chimed again. Warning: ships deploying atmospheric craft. Estimated arrival of search parties. 15 minutes. Alexian ran a hand through his close-cropped hair. They'll have thermal scanners. This place is shielded, but that crystal, its energy signature must be visible for miles. I can dampen its output, but not for long. Kreia stepped closer to him, her skin glowing more intensely. I know I have no right to ask for your help, but if Lorden gets this crystal, countless worlds will suffer. He turned away, moving to check his security feeds. I don't take sides anymore. Not after. The memories threatened to surface. His family, the war, the choices that haunted him. He pushed them back down. Sometimes not taking sides is taking a side, Kreia said quietly. She touched his arm, and he felt warmth spread from the contact. I've seen your work, Alexian. You create beauty from the cold itself. Will you really stand by and watch that beauty burn? Before he could answer, alarms blared. Multiple breaches detected in outer perimeter, armed forces approaching from 3 vectors. Alexian sprang into action, muscle memory taking over. Computer, activate Defense Protocol Sigma. Get to the safe room, he told Kreia. 3rd door on the left, palm print will let you in. I can fight, she protested. You can barely stand. Go. He was already moving to his weapons locker, pulling out a cryo rifle of his own design. I'll hold them off. She caught his arm again. Alexian. Thank you. Then she was gone, running toward the safe room with surprising speed despite her injuries. He checked his tactical display one last time. At least 12 heavily armed troops approaching through the storm. They'd found them faster than he'd expected. So much for staying uninvolved, he muttered, charging his rifle. The familiar hum of its cryocore was oddly comforting. Time to show these invaders why even Lorden's forces feared the master of the frozen forge. The first shots came through the outer walls, plasma bolts melting through centuries-old ice. Alexian had anticipated this. As the first mercenaries breached the perimeter, automated defense turrets responded with precise cryoblasts, instantly freezing 2 soldiers solid. But these weren't common thugs. The remaining troops adapted quickly, using thermal shields and coordinated movement. They were well-trained, well-equipped, and determined. Alexian moved through his workshop like a ghost, using the maze-like layout he'd designed over years. Each turn, each chamber was a potential trap. He activated cryo mines, watching through security feeds as advancing soldiers were caught in waves of supercooled air. 3 hostiles approaching the main forge, the computer warned. He smiled grimly. They'd walked right into his favorite trap. With a command, he activated the forge's emergency protocols. Liquid nitrogen flooded the chamber, flash freezing everything inside. But he'd underestimated their preparation. A massive explosion rocked the complex, breaching his inner defenses. Heat signatures appeared on his tactical display. They were burning through his walls with military-grade thermal lances. "Safe room breach imminent," the computer announced. Alexian's heart raced. He couldn't let them reach Kreia and the crystal. He sprinted toward the safe room, firing precise shots that turned corridors into glacial tombs. But for every soldier he stopped, two more appeared. He reached the safe room just as the far wall exploded inward. Through the smoke strode a figure that made his blood run cold, a towering cyborg, its body radiating heat that melted the ice around it. "The crystal," it demanded in a mechanically enhanced voice. "Give it to us, and you may live." Alexian's response was a cryoblast aimed at its power core. The cyborg moved with impossible speed, deflecting the shot. Its return fire caught Alexian in the shoulder, searing through his armor. Then Kreia was there, moving like liquid lightning. She rolled under the cyborg's guard, pressing the soul crystal against its chest. Light exploded through the room as crystal and machine interacted, sending feedback through the cyborg's systems. "Run!" she shouted, grabbing Alexian's good arm. They fled through emergency tunnels as explosions rocked the complex behind them. Alexian's workshop, his sanctuary of 15 years, was collapsing. Everything he'd built, destroyed in minutes. They emerged into the howling storm, Kreia supporting his injured frame. Behind them, flames lit the twilight as his home burned despite the cold. "There's a backup shelter," he gasped through the pain. 2 kilometers north, if we can." A spotlight cut through the storm. Above them, a massive ship descended, heat waves distorting the air around it. "You can't run forever," a new voice boomed across the ice field. "The crystal belongs to Lord Orden now." Kreia's grip tightened on Alexian's arm. The crystal pulsed between them, its warmth their only shield against the bitter wind. "Trust me," she whispered. He met her glowing eyes and nodded once. She pressed the crystal into his hands, then raised her arms toward the ship. Her skin blazed with light, patterns swirling like constellations gone mad. The crystal responded, its energy flowing into Alexian's body. The world turned white. When his vision cleared, the ship was gone. So was his workshop, reduced to a smoking crater in the ice. Kreia lay unconscious in his arms, her skin barely glowing. But they were alive, and the crystal was safe. As he lifted her broken body and began the long trek toward his backup shelter, Alexian knew his life of isolation was over. He had chosen a side at last. As Alexian carried Kreia through the storm, her unconscious form barely stirring against his chest, he felt the weight of more than her fragile body. The soul crystal pulsed faintly between them, its warmth a stark contrast to the icy gale. Each step toward the backup shelter felt like a vow, an unspoken promise to protect her, no matter the cost. But promises meant little to the forces hunting them. They struck like the storm itself, swift and overwhelming. The last thing Alexian saw before darkness consumed him was Kreia being torn from his arms, her glowing eyes meeting his with a mix of desperation and defiance. When he woke, it was too late. His sanctuary had fallen, and his body was no longer his own. Pain exploded through Alexian's nervous system as the cryo implant burrowed into his spine. He arched against the restraints, teeth clenched to keep from screaming. The operating theater's sterile lights burned his eyes, making the surgeons look like looming shadows as they worked. "Remarkable resistance," a cold voice observed. "Most subjects lose consciousness during the first insertion." Lorden stepped into view, his pale skin nearly translucent under the harsh lights. The tyrant's body was wrapped in thermal regulators that pumped heated fluid through transparent tubes. His eyes, gray as Arctic ice, studied Alexian with clinical interest. "The famous Forge Master," Lorden continued. "Do you know why I chose you specifically for this program?" Alexian tried to speak, but another wave of agony tore through him as they inserted the second implant. Through the haze of pain, he saw Kreia watching from behind reinforced glass, her violet skin dulled with horror. They were forcing her to witness this. Your reputation for precision, Lorden answered his own question. Your understanding of thermal manipulation at the molecular level. These implants will make you the perfect weaponsmith. Once they're fully integrated, of course. The surgeon spoke up. My lord, the neural pathways are fighting the integration. His body is attempting to reject the implants. Increase the suppression drugs, Lorden ordered. Break him. More chemicals flooded Alexian's system. The world began to fragment, memories bleeding into hallucinations. He saw his family dying again, felt the heat of the explosion that took them. But now, Kreia was there too, reaching for him as shadows dragged her away. Fight it, he heard her voice in his mind. Remember who you are. The darkness took him. He woke in a sterile cell, his body feeling alien and wrong. The implants pulsed with cold energy along his spine and across his shoulders. When he tried to move, pain sparked through new neural pathways. Subject is conscious, a mechanical voice announced, beginning baseline testing. Screens activated around him, displaying molecular structures and weapon schematics. His enhanced vision processed them automatically, the implants forcing his mind to analyze weak points and potential improvements. Impressive, Lorden's voice came through hidden speakers. The integration is proceeding faster than expected. How does it feel, Forge Master, to be truly one with the cold? Alexian remained silent, focusing on controlling his breathing. They'd stripped him of everything, his home, his freedom, even his own body. But they couldn't take his mind unless he let them. The door slid open and guards entered, hauling him to his feet. Time to begin your real work, one said, shoving him forward. They marched him through corridors of gleaming ice and steel. The Citadel was a monument to Lorden's obsession with cold, every surface engineered to maintain precise, sub-zero temperatures. Other prisoners watched from their cells as he passed, their eyes hollow. The forge they brought him to was a twisted mirror of his old workshop. Advanced equipment lined the walls, but everything felt wrong. Designed for destruction rather than creation. They shackled him to a workstation, the restraints interfacing with his implants. Your first assignment, a supervisor announced, displaying specs for a cryo cannon. Lord Lorden expects a prototype within 3 days. Alexian's hands moved automatically, the implants compelling him to work. But beneath the surface compliance, his mind raced. Every tool they gave him was a potential weapon. Every moment they thought him broken was a chance to plan. He caught glimpses of Kreia sometimes, being moved between interrogation sessions. Though they never spoke, he learned to read the subtle patterns that rippled across her skin, a language of light that the guards didn't understand. She was resisting too, protecting the soul crystal's secrets despite whatever they did to her. Days blurred together in an endless cycle of forced labor and pain. The implants grew more integrated, spreading icy tendrils through his nervous system. But with each piece he crafted, each weapon he was forced to design, Alexian learned their weaknesses. Late one night, when the guards thought him lost in work, he caught movement in his peripheral vision. Kreia was being escorted past his forge, but something was different. Her skin patterns shifted in a deliberate sequence. A message. Crystal intact. Wake hours. 3rd shift. He kept his face impassive, fingers never pausing in their work. But his mind raced with possibilities. The 3rd shift had the fewest guards and the automated systems ran diagnostics then. If she had managed to keep the soul crystal hidden somehow. Your output is decreasing. The supervisor's voice cut through his thoughts. Perhaps you need additional motivation. The door opened, and guards dragged in what looked like a modified interrogation chair. Alexian's implants reacted instantly, sending waves of cold pain through his body. "Lord Lorden designed this specially for you," the supervisor said, watching as they forced him into the chair. "It interfaces directly with your implants. Every moment of decreased productivity results in feedback." The demonstration that followed left Alexian gasping, his vision blurred with tears of pain. But through it all, he clung to the memory of Krea's message. They hadn't broken her. He wouldn't break either. Hours later, back at his workstation, he began embedding subtle flaws in his designs. Nothing obvious, just slight imperfections that would compound over time. His real work happened in stolen moments between official projects, tiny components disguised as decorative elements, smuggled to his cell one piece at a time. The wings took shape slowly, hidden within the endless stream of weapons he produced. Each piece had to be perfect, had to interface seamlessly with his implants while appearing harmless. One mistake would cost them everything. One evening, as he worked on what appeared to be an ornamental bracer, Krea was brought in for what the guards called a motivation session. They forced her to stand where he could see her, then activated devices that disrupted her natural bioluminescence. "Tell us how to access the crystal's core," the interrogator demanded. Krea's skin flickered in agony, but her eyes met Alexian's. In that moment of connection, her patterns shifted subtly. Together, soon. "The crystal requires a living conduit," she gasped out. "It can't be artificially accessed." The interrogator signaled, and the disruption increased. But Alexian had caught her meaning. The soul crystal's power could flow through biological pathways, like the ones his implants had created throughout his body. He worked faster after that, purpose driving him through the pain. The wings took final shape, a masterpiece of bioengineering disguised as a status symbol, each component carefully crafted to channel both cryo-energy and the crystal's heat. Late one night, as he lay in his cell fighting the implant's cold burn, he heard her voice in his mind more clearly than ever before. "Are you ready?" she whispered through their growing connection. He touched the hidden components of his creation, feeling the potential humming within them. Tomorrow, he thought back, third shift. In his dreams that night, he saw himself flying through storms of ice and fire, Krea's light guiding him home. But home wasn't a place anymore. It was the warmth of her presence in his mind, a defiance of the cold that had claimed so much of him. The next day would end in freedom or death. Either way, the Forge Master would remind Lorden why the greatest weapons were forged not through force but through necessity. Dawn brought the usual agony as Alexian's implants reactivated, but today, the pain felt different, purposeful. Each freezing pulse through his nervous system was one step closer to their goal. He worked methodically, completing his assigned projects with mechanical precision. The guards had grown used to his apparent submission, barely watching as he added decorative touches to each piece. None of them noticed how the patterns matched the shifting lights of Krea's skin. "Lord Lorden requires your presence," the supervisor announced mid-afternoon. "He wishes to inspect your progress personally." Alexian's heart raced, but his implants kept his exterior calm. This wasn't part of the plan. As guards escorted him to Lorden's private chambers, he frantically tried to signal Krea through their connection. The tyrant's quarters were a stark contrast to the industrial sections of the citadel. Rare artifacts lined the walls, each displaying mastery over cold in different forms. Lorden himself sat in a modified life support chair, thermal regulators working overtime to keep his failing body warm. "My finest craftsman," Lorden said, his voice weaker than Alexian remembered. "Show me what you've created." Alexian presented his latest weapons, explaining their functions with technical precision. All the while, his real creations burned in his awareness, hidden components waiting to be assembled. "Extraordinary," Lorden wheezed. The implants have served their purpose well. But tell me, have you noticed anything unusual about their integration? Any unexpected connections? The question sent ice through Alexian's veins that had nothing to do with his implants. Did Lorden suspect their plan? Know about his growing link with Kreia? Only standard neural adaptation, my lord, he replied carefully. The cold has become part of me. Lorden's gray eyes studied him intently. Indeed. You know, the implants weren't designed solely for weapons crafting. They're prototypes for something far more ambitious. He gestured to his own failing body. A complete integration of human consciousness with cold itself, perfect adaptation to any environment. You want to transform yourself, Alexian realized. Use the soul crystal's power to fuel a complete conversion. Not just myself. Imagine an army of perfectly adapted soldiers, immune to temperature extremes, capable of surviving anywhere. Lorden's eyes gleamed with fevered intensity. Your implants are proof it's possible. All I need is the crystal's power source. The magnitude of Lorden's plan staggered him. This wasn't just about weapons or conquest. It was about reshaping humanity itself. Of course, Lorden continued, accessing the crystal's power requires certain sacrifices. Your alien friend has been most unhelpful in this regard. Perhaps seeing what the implants have done to you will encourage her cooperation. Alexian maintained his passive expression, but inside, determination crystallized. They had to move tonight. Whatever the cost, Lorden's vision of a frozen future had to be stopped. Return to your work, Lorden dismissed him. Soon you'll witness the dawn of a new age. Back in his forge, Alexian's fingers flew over his projects with renewed urgency. Each component had to be perfect. Their lives, and perhaps the future of humanity, depended on it. Through their connection, he felt Kreia's presence, stronger than ever. Tonight, her patterns whispered. No matter what. The wings were ready. Freedom waited in the cold dark above. All they needed now was the courage to fly. The third shift began like any other. Guards changed, systems cycled into diagnostic mode, and Alexian worked steadily at his station. But tonight, each movement was precisely calculated. The components he'd hidden throughout the citadel hummed in his awareness, connected through the very implants meant to enslave him. A maintenance alert flashed on his console, the signal he'd been waiting for. Somewhere in the detention block, Kreia would be making her move. Requesting technical support in cell block 7, the system announced. Power fluctuations detected. The supervisor frowned at his screens. Continue your work. Security will handle it. Alexian's fingers moved across his console, executing commands disguised as routine maintenance. Throughout the citadel, tiny sabotages activated. Temperature regulators began to fail. Security systems reported phantom breaches. The first explosion rocked the Foundation 3 minutes later. Alarms screamed as chaos erupted. Guards rushed to contain multiple system failures, leaving only 2 to watch Alexian. He felt Kreia's presence grow stronger. She was close now. Lock down the forge, the supervisor ordered. The prisoner doesn't move. But Alexian was already moving. The implants that were supposed to control him now amplified his movements, channeling cold energy in ways their creators never intended. The first guard went down before he could raise his weapon, flash frozen by a touch. The second guard managed to fire, but Alexian's enhanced reflexes let him dodge. The shot hit his workstation instead, destroying weeks of forced labor. He allowed himself a grim smile as he snapped the guard's neck. "Security breach in detention!" Voices shouted over comms. "The alien prisoner has—" The message cut off in static. Alexian grabbed his hidden components, pieces clicking together with satisfying precision. The wings unfurled from what had appeared to be decorative armor, crystalline matrices humming with potential. The supervisor reached for his emergency beacon, but ice had already crept up his legs, freezing him in place. "Impossible," he gasped. "The implants can't be used this way." "You never understood," Alexian told him. "Cold isn't just about freezing. It's about change, transformation." He leaned close. "Your greatest mistake was teaching me to forge with it." The door burst inward. Kreia stood there, her skin blazing with power, guards frozen at her feet. The soul crystal pulsed in her hands. "You're late," Alexian said, drinking in the sight of her. Her answering smile was fierce. "Had to make a few stops. Ready to fly?" Lorden's voice boomed through the Citadel speakers. "Kill them both! The crystal must not—" Another explosion cut him off. This one closer, more violent. The ceiling groaned ominously. "Time to go," Kreia said. She pressed the crystal into Alexian's chest, right above his heart. Power surged through his implants, ice and heat dancing together in impossible harmony. The wings responded, spreading wide. Not metal, not ice, but something in between. His masterwork, born of captivity and forged in defiance. They ran for the nearest viewport, guards in pursuit. Kreia's hand found his as they crashed through the reinforced glass together. For one heart-stopping moment, they fell through Frostalis's eternal twilight. Then the wings caught the frigid air, and they soared into the storm-dark sky. Behind them, Lorden's citadel burned with cold fire. The crystal-powered wings cut through Frostalis's howling winds as Alexian and Kreia soared away from the burning citadel. Behind them, explosions continued to rock Lorden's fortress, each blast sending shockwaves through the frozen air. "We've got company!" Kreia shouted over the wind. "Combat drones, closing fast!" Alexian banked hard, the wings responding to his thoughts through the implants. Energy coursed through his modified nervous system, cold and heat dancing in perfect balance. The soul crystal pulsed against his chest, its power amplifying every movement. Plasma bolts streaked past them, turning snowflakes to steam. The drones were designed for pursuit, but they hadn't counted on the Forge Master's intimate knowledge of Frostalis's storms. "Hold tight," he called to Kreia, who clung to his back. They dove into a massive wall of ice crystals, the wings folding close. Behind them, two drones crashed and exploded, their sensors blinded by the frozen maze. They emerged above the cloud layer, twilight painting everything in deep purple hues. For a moment, they hung suspended between heaven and earth, and Alexian felt Kreia's wonder through their connection. Then more alarms screamed in his enhanced senses. Capital ship incoming. A massive warship burst through the clouds, its hull crackling with defensive fields. Lorden's flagship, the Eternal Frost, brought its weapons to bear. "He's desperate," Kreia observed, her skin pattern shifting rapidly. The crystals affecting his implants. He can feel it slipping away. "Then let's end this." Alexian stretched his wings wide, letting the crystal's power flow freely. "You said it needs a living conduit?" "Yes, but—" Her patterns flared with concern. "The amount of energy required could kill you. Trust me." He squeezed her hand. "I've got a better idea." They dove straight at the flagship, dodging point defense fire. Alexian's implants interfaced with the wings, channeling power in ways that defied their original purpose. The crystals sang against his chest, resonating with Kreia's essence. "Now!" he shouted as they reached the ship's hull. Kreia pressed her hands against Alexian's implants, her bioluminescence synchronizing with the crystal's pulse. Power exploded through them both, neither hot nor cold, but something transcendent. The flagship's shields shattered as waves of energy rippled outward. "Impossible!" Lorden's voice boomed across all frequencies. "The crystal responds only to life," Kreia finished. "And love." things you tried to freeze out of the universe. Through his enhanced vision, Alexian saw Lorden in his command center, thermal regulators failing as the crystal's power interfered with his systems. The tyrant's modified body was rejecting its own implants, unable to handle the pure energy flowing through the ship. "You could have used this power to heal," Alexian transmitted. "Instead, you tried to weaponize it. That was your final mistake." The flagship's hull began to crack, thermal stress tearing it apart from within. They pulled away as secondary explosions chained through the massive vessel. "All ships, destroy them," Lorden commanded, his voice cracking. "I order you to—" His words cut off as the command center imploded. Throughout the fleet, crews who had suffered under his rule began to rebel, turning on their officers. Alexian and Kreia soared higher, watching the Empire literally fall apart beneath them. The Soul Crystal's energy spread through the atmosphere, neutralizing the weapons that had kept Frostalis in perpetual winter. "Look," Kreia whispered. Through breaks in the clouds, they saw the first rays of true sunlight touch the planet's surface in centuries. Ice began to melt, revealing hints of the world that had been buried under Lorden's reign. They landed on a high plateau, exhausted but triumphant. Alexian's wings folded back, the crystal's power settling into a steady warmth between them. "The implants," he said suddenly, touching his spine. "They're different." Kreia examined him with glowing eyes. "The crystal's energy has transformed them, merged them with your own essence." She smiled. "Like it did with us." He felt it then, not just their mental connection, but a deeper resonance. The cold that had been forced into him had become something new, tempered by her warmth. "There will be chaos," he warned, looking at the burning ships in the distance. "Power vacuums, territory disputes. Good thing they'll have us to help sort it out." Her skin rippled with determination. "Your forge skills, my crystal knowledge. We can help rebuild, teach others to use power without corrupting it." Months passed. They established a new sanctuary, far from the ruins of Lorden's citadel. Ships came from across the galaxy, refugees, rebels, those seeking knowledge. Alexian taught them his craft while Kreia shared her people's wisdom about balancing creation and destruction. One twilight evening, as they stood watching the sun paint new colors across Frostalis's changing landscape, Kreia placed Alexian's hand on her abdomen. Through their connection, he felt it immediately. A tiny spark of life, glowing with both crystal energy and natural warmth. "Impossible," he breathed, wonder replacing his usual stoicism. "Says the man who built wings from prison scraps and flew through a battleship." Her skin patterns danced with joy and mischief. "Our genes shouldn't be compatible, but the crystal's energy, it's changed us both at the cellular level." Alexian pulled her close, feeling their shared warmth pulse against the ever-present cold. A child of two worlds, like the wings. "Speaking of which," she gestured to where his masterwork hung, crystalline surfaces catching the light. "Think you could forge a smaller pair?" He laughed, the sound still strange but becoming more natural. "Already designing them in my head." Their moment was interrupted by an urgent signal from the sanctuary's communications array. New reports were coming in from the outer systems. Worlds long frozen under Lorden's rule were experiencing their first thaws. But with freedom came responsibility. "They need guidance," Kreia said, reading the reports. "Knowledge of how to handle the changes without destroying themselves." Alexian nodded, already moving toward their ship. "Then we'd better get started. The galaxy won't rebuild itself." She caught his arm, her expression serious despite her glowing smile. "You know this means leaving Frostalis. Are you ready?" He looked around at the world that had been his prison and sanctuary, his forge and battlefield. The implants hummed beneath his skin, no longer a burden but a reminder of everything they'd overcome. "I spent years hiding from the galaxy," he said, "thinking isolation would keep the pain away." He touched her face, feeling the warmth of their connection. "You showed me a better way to fight the cold." Their ship's engines warmed up as they made final preparations. The soul crystal pulsed steadily in its new housing, ready to bring life to worlds too long trapped in winter. "Where to first?" Kreia asked from the co-pilot's seat, her pattern shifting with excitement. Alexian smiled, spreading his wings one last time over their former prison. "Wherever the storm takes us." The ship lifted off, carrying hope and warmth to the stars. Behind them, Frostalis continued its slow transformation, proof that even the deepest cold could be overcome by the right combination of passion and precision, of love and craftsmanship. They had forged something new in the heart of winter. Now it was time to share that fire with the galaxy. Epilogue. 1 year later, on what Earth calendars still called Christmas Eve, Alexian stood in their new home's workshop, making final adjustments to his smallest creation yet, a delicate mobile of crystalline stars and tiny wings that would hang above their child's crib. "Still working?" Kreia's voice came from the doorway. Her violet skin glowed softly in the workshop's dim light, her advanced pregnancy making her natural bioluminescence even more radiant. "Almost done," he replied, carefully attaching the last crystal. "Just in time for the holiday." "Ah, yes, the Earth tradition you told me about." She waddled over, gracefully despite her condition, and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "The one about giving gifts and celebrating new life in the darkest time of year." The soul crystal, mounted in a special housing nearby, pulsed warmly in response to her presence. Their unborn child's energy signature flickered in harmony with it, creating dancing patterns of light across the workshop walls. "Seems fitting," Alexian said, turning to face her. "A year ago we were fighting for our lives in the cold. Now we're building a future," she finished, taking his hand and placing it on her belly where their daughter kicked strongly. "Speaking of building, did you finish the other project?" He smiled and reached under his workbench, pulling out a tiny pair of crystal wings, perfectly sized for a child. "Her first pair. They'll grow with her." Kreia's eyes glowed with joy. "A perfect Christmas gift for our little star walker." Outside their home, snow fell gently on the reformed landscape of their corner of Frostalis. But this was natural snow, part of a healthy season cycle, not the eternal winter of Lorden's reign. Through the window, they could see the lights of other homes, a community of artists, scientists, and freedom fighters who had made this place their home. "Happy Christmas," Alexian whispered, holding his family close. Kreia's skin pattern shifted into the beautiful stellar configurations that he now knew meant pure happiness. "Happy Christmas, my forge master." Above them, the crystal stars of the mobile began to spin gently, casting warm light into the gathering dark, a promise of spring to come. "In crafting this tale of ice and starlight, I've woven threads of hope into every word. As Christmas approaches, may you find your own crystal moments, those sparks of warmth that turn the longest nights into paths toward dawn. Thank you for journeying through the cold with Alexian and Kreia, and may your holidays glow as brightly as alien skin under twilight stars, with warmth from the forge, your storyteller."